An invasion by Argentina provoked one of the most ambitious military undertakings in British history. Britain sent a naval task force and 15,000 men to fight for a small group of islands on the edge of the Atlantic. Look at the challenges that faced the British, struggling to fight 8,000 miles.
Experience how the British troops used darkness to their advantage against a well-defended enemy.
It was one of the most improbable conflicts ever. More than 30,000 men went to war over a group of barren and windswept islands that were home to only 2,000 people. This is the feat of warships, supply ships, and even cruise liners like the QE2. At the heart of the fleet were two aircraft carriers, HMS Invincible and HMS Hermes. Hermes was the flagship and home to the During that time, Britain would try for a diplomatic solution. But if that failed, the task force would have to go to war when it got there.
High-performance fighter bombers from bases on the mainland. These aircraft could attack the task force once they were within range. On the 1st of May 1982, the Battle for the Falklands began. The first clash between Britain and Argentina was in the air. But despite being the underdog, the British immediately showed they were a force to be reckoned with. There was one thing that the Argentinians hadn't expected. Britain's latest acquisition, the Sea Harrier. God, you can feel the power of that thing, it's unbelievable. That's what's required to get it off this tiny deck. Whoa! This aircraft was brand new, untested in combat when it was sent to the Falklands. Unique in its ability to take off and land vertically and operate from short runways, the Harrier quickly proved it was versatile and extremely reliable. And the Harrier had another killer advantage.
It was protected at all costs. And although the action continued in the skies, the focus of the battle shifted to the rough sea. Immediately, the entire Argentinian Navy, fearful of further submarine attacks, turned round and headed home. The British had scored a huge military success, and Galtieri's plans seemed to be faltering. But he was still able to unleash the weapon the British feared most. The Argentinians had recently bought 5 air-launched Exocets. These half-ton missiles could seek out and destroy a ship from over 30 miles away. On the morning of the 4th of May, 2 Argentinian strike aircraft, each armed with an Exocet, took off from the mainland. On red. The Argentinian High Command sent in wave after wave of their fighter bombers from the mainland. For 5 hours, these aircraft bombed and strafed the fleet sitting in the bay. The surrounding hills made it almost impossible for the ship's radars to detect the enemy aircraft, so the British were unable to get a fix on the attacking planes until it was too late.
The British had positioned anti-aircraft missiles around the bay, but it would be days before these delicate units were operational. On the water, the men had resorted to strapping machine guns onto the ship's rails in a desperate attempt to hit the low-flying Argentinian jets. More conventional anti-aircraft guns, some operated by sailors as young as 17, did score a few successes. But all these efforts did little to blunt the relentless onslaught of the Argentinian Air Force.
The British ships unloading vital supplies for the land.
We watched with lumps in our throats as Antelope raged with fire and finally sank. She was our escort and everybody felt a great loss, as she was more than just a ship to us.
In 4 days, 8 British ships were damaged and 2 sunk. During these attacks, 25 men died and many more were injured. While the British were reeling from the attacks in San Carlos water, the Argentinians were celebrating their triumphs. On the 25th of May, it was Argentina's National Day, a day of patriotic ceremony. And after the successes of their air campaign, Menendez and his troops in the Falklands had even more reason to celebrate.
Subordinación y valor.
But it wasn't over yet. The Argentinian Air Force was preparing another raid that would hit the British land campaign where it really hurt.
As a quick raid to seize back the airstrip and liberate the community had turned into a bloody battle in the struggle for the Falkland Islands.
The British had won.
They caught both ships in broad daylight, packed with troops and ammunition. "49 men were killed and a further 115 injured in the disaster.
"900 British had died, and he now expected a slackening in the British momentum.
At the moment, the most important thing is we've done our attack. We've got to keep up the momentum, keep up the speed, and I guess keep the enemy off balance. We're about to go over this rise now, and interestingly, the commander here is constantly telling everyone what's going on in the rest of the battlefield. Even though it's only 50 or 100 meters away, it's very confusing in the dark. We can just hear firing and lots of shouting. So he's constantly going around telling everyone at what stage we're at, trying to keep everything going to plan.
For the British troops on the Falklands, keeping to the plan and maintaining momentum would be the key to their success when fighting at night. As day broke, the British brought in the dead and injured from both sides. Most of the Argentinian casualties and prisoners were conscript soldiers, young men drafted into the army. While these soldiers had fought well, many of them were worn down by the conditions before the battle had begun. They hammered the remaining enemy positions in a final all-out bombardment. Soon,
And on the 14th of June, the British demanded the Argentinian surrender. 24 days. But now, as Para marched into the capital, it was back in British hands.
a month later, the first British troops arrived back home to jubilant celebrations. This victory had given people a renewed sense of pride in their country